Hi folks, I hope you're well. So, for me, when I look at Paul and Peter and John and what they wrote, I understand that they were incredibly limited in what they could understand at that point in time, based upon what was available for them to understand and the tools that were available to help them to understand at that point in time. John hadn't actually written the Gospel of John. The information was there. He'd be sharing a lot of that information with people like Paul and Peter and Timothy and others. He'd be sharing that information with them. But he didn't have Matthew, he didn't have Mark, he didn't have Luke. Even though they would be sharing bits as they remembered them. The problem is that them sharing bits as they remember, especially when you're in a situation where you're facing persecution and you may have to run very, very quickly, leave the place you're in, leave everything there, boom, gone. Focusing on a story that someone's telling you is not an easy thing to do, especially when you are one of the leaders and you're responsible for the people there. Right? So again, we have to understand context of what people were in at the time and what they had. And I say they definitely would have been sharing. Like, when I go out, I tell people, whatever God has given me over the past 5 years, I share that with people because I have to. And that's why I say, right, I've watched videos where people have supposedly gone to heaven. And I know straight away if that person is lying, if that person never went to heaven in the first place. Because, most of the time, what they do is they watch a video of someone who claims to have gone to heaven and they basically copy what that other person is saying. They change a few details, boom. And then they go and they tell people their fake story. But how do you know? If a person is telling the story of how they went to heaven and they say that they kept that secret because they didn't really know how to tell people, you never went. Sorry. You never had anything to say. If God shows you something, you can't bloody help but share it. You can't. For goodness sake, you have something that can prove God, and what? God's going to choose you? Someone who's too afraid to actually share it because they don't really know how to share it in the right way? No. No. I share things in the wrong way. Do I care? Nope. I don't, because it's not up to me. It isn't. I understand. It's not up to me. Quite often when I share things, I'm thinking, what the hell did I just say? What did I just do? But God knows exactly what needs to be said to people and how it needs to be said for them to receive. Sometimes I'm supposed to say things in a way that comes across to people as so bloody ridiculous that they go to God to complain about it, and God then reveals it when they go to God to complain about it. So, okay. That's the point. You can't help yourself. When you have something that is beautiful, that is stunning, you can't help but share it. You can't help but share it. It's like the film Alien, when you got that thing coming out of that man, the alien. It's like that. You've got that truth that wants out. It wants out. It wants out. It wants out. It wants out. Especially in a world in darkness. Any light in you wants to come out. It wants to shine in that darkness. It wants to lead people to God. not church, to God. And again, look, with regards to Paul, with regards to other people, yeah, they would have shared. Get back to the point of what I was saying. Yeah, they would have shared. But they wouldn't have had it written down where they could turn to it and they could, save the page. So next time they continue for where they left off, they never had that. Having it written down so you can go back to it, prayerfully go back to it, and prayerfully read it is just, sharing stories, that's a tool. Having it all written down. So as I say, it's like with the Old Testament. Before Moses wrote it down, those stories are being told in bits and bobs, in bits and bobs, in bits and bobs, in bits and bobs. But once it was written down, it had power. It had life. When it was just the stories, being told, that was a tool, but compared to it written down, yeah. It's like going from the pencil to the most powerful computer in the world. Yeah, both are tools. One can help you to go so far. The other one, that takes you to another level. Another 5,000 levels. That was the same with the Gospels. My goodness me, when the Gospels were written down, the words of Christ, the words of the Son of God written down, the immense power. That's why the church tried so hard to have absolute control over the Bible. They wanted only the ministers to have it. They could have mass produced it and made it cheap way before they did. But they didn't, because the power that they had. And they had so much power. When people were getting old, they left everything to the church. Why? Because the church would basically tell them if they did that, they would go to heaven. And people did that. Yeah. Yeah. There's immense power with truth. And when it's written down, those stories become far more alive. And those in the early church, they did not have that. And so therefore, they were limited with regards to the tools that they had available. That's not saying that they didn't work hard and that they didn't do all they could. Because again, not having the tools doesn't mean that you are worth less. It means you had less available. It doesn't mean that you yourself or your ministry is worth less. Paul, I imagine, when looking down at Pentecost, not Pentecost, the early Pentecost, but when the Pentecostal church, so about 100 years ago, he would have been saying to the Son of God, this truth, was this available then? Yeah, when I was alive, was that truth? And the Son of God would have said yes. And then Paul might have said, okay, so but why didn't we speak about this? Why didn't we share this? Why wasn't this our focal point? And the Son of God would have said, because it was these people's job to do this. It wasn't yours. It was your job to do what you were doing. It was your job to build the church pretty much from scratch. It was their job, the people doing it now, it's their job to take the church to the next level. But although all of that truth was available to you at that point in time, it wasn't time for that to be revealed in the way it has been now. But that doesn't diminish Paul or Peter or Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, or Barnabas, or any of the others. It doesn't minimize them. There's a time. There's a time for all things. And at that time, it was a time for what they were doing. Now, we're in a time when that truth that was always available, relationship with Father, is now the thing that's going to be understood and learned. Where people are going to start to walk in that and grow in that and lead others in that, the same way that Paul, Peter were basically leading people in this very new thing that was available then. So let's see. Be blessed.